Welcome to the 16th set of exchanges as we take the Sahana Vavtu approach forward in developing the well-being curriculum as part of this approach. This is the second exchange we are having for developing the curriculum, and as we take this idea forward, we can we have seen what we have done in the last session. We saw Professor Sir Carey Cooper and some other researchers' work. So can research lead to a global well-being agenda that prevents social pain? That's the question we are answering in developing the new curriculum design. And we saw on one hand earlier the evidence of some practices of ancient wisdom, and we saw in the last session Professor Sir Carey Cooper's and some other researchers' work. So the question that comes out is, will practices without a guiding philosophy create well-being? This is what we raised in the last few sessions. Can without a guiding philosophy, can well-being be created? More importantly, will it be able to transform attitudes? Our evidence suggests that ideas of well-being naturally emerge from practices of that ancient wisdom imparts to students. We have discussed earlier that it is not possible to drink the ocean of research. There's a huge ocean of research. So we cannot bring to you the whole ocean. What we will instead do is taste a drop to see the possible taste that can be offered by this research. So can practices of ancient wisdom that only increase excellence, can they be useful? Or is it a gestalt, or what we need is a gestalt between excellence and goodness? So is there a spirit that underlies both, which goes through excellence and through goodness, and what is that spirit? What transforms attitudes because we are saying that it is that spirit, underlying spirit between which goes through excellence and goodness, that is what transforms attitudes that OECD wants. And we have seen how this excellence was able to create, filled with goodness, was able to create the evidence that we saw. We saw excellence in the academic institutions, we saw excellence in the speed and the quality of work and the quality of services provided by the hospitals. We've seen the speed and the quality of work done in the drinking water projects. So we, in the last session, saw practices in Silicon Valley's companies which lead to excellence. But can they lead only to excellence? Without goodness that wisdom's philosophy imparts, will they succeed in creating well-being? That's the question. The OECD has given us a time frame of 1850s Industrial Revolution to see how education got linked to social pain. We reversed the journey to find the root of the problem. So were 1850s problems similar to those of today? A good mirror of society may be in literature. So can we look at literature of this time and find if we have progressed? Lewis Carroll is a Victorian author of this time. Has the time come now to talk about cabbages and kings, as he writes? The poem The Walrus and the Carpenter of Lewis Carroll depicts cunningness in human nature, an intelligence that is found in animals too. The poem speaks about a walrus and a carpenter who trick innocent young oysters and eat them up after a walk on the seashore. Wisdom is another theme of this poem, as the older oysters refuse to join them for a walk. At a deeper level, the poem points out not to follow what is presented as obvious. We should not follow it blindly. So is it talking about sense perception? That the young oysters followed this sense perception and walked, on the seashore and got gobbled up, and the older oysters contemplated, looked beyond sense perception thought over the matter, had a different attitude which was not emerging from sense perception. So, were their lives saved because of that attitude? We have discussed the obvious truth that sensuousness presents. We have discussed that Immanuel Kant found sense perception to be deceptive. We have also seen that Bertrand Russell, discovering that the pursuit of knowledge, in the pursuit of knowledge, pleasure and pain, which are sense perception experiences, he finds them not being so relevant. Yet we have found that social pain resulted despite such thought existing in society. So was the prevalent philosophy a cause of confusion in using these ideas? Was academics aware of social pain even prior to 2008? That becomes our next question. That yes, there is a guiding philosophy, and of Kant and Bertrand Russell, they had some realizations, but the still social pain occurred. So we want to, we may say that they are not part of the mainstream of education, the mainstream of academics. So was the mainstream of academics aware of social pain prior to 2008? JSTOR is the short form of journal storage. It was founded by the former president of Princeton. In volume 151 of Curriculum Visions in Counterpoints Journal exists an interesting chapter. The Dean College of Education, NC State University, Fleener, has co-authored it with Sullivan. The chapter is introduced like this, and I quote, "The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things," unquote. The introduction to the chapter continues, and I quote, "But in reality, the walrus and the carpenter said little. Their mouths were too full of oysters," unquote. It continues, and I quote, "The walrus and carpenter were men of action, not idle chat. And what about our schools? Are these places of action, of learning, of inquiry? What is the situation there? For the oysters, the situation was dreadful. They were consumed." Looking ahead to Alex Molnar's essay, he holds that our children are being consumed too by corporate America. Like the oysters of Louis Carroll's piece, they are ripe for plucking and are being plucked, unquote. This was published before 2008, showing awareness in academics. The introduction explores the purpose that schools serve. It states that Jane Fleener proposes that our school should be, and I'm quoting, more of experiential inquiry than for the consumption of ramistic logic. In fact, presaging John St. Julian in that volume, Fleener hints at the fact that logic itself may be flawed, a point dear to the heart of Louis Carroll, unquote. So what is the link of logic and our method? Logic is the basis of method according to Aristotle. That is why method is the basis of our methodology, which is the basis of ethics and research ethics curriculum. Stanford Encyclopedia states about Aristotle's system, and I quote, "In addition to careful observation, then scientific method requires a logic as a system of reasoning for properly arranging but also inferring beyond what is known by observation," unquote. And this is exactly the academic logic of the link between them that we stress upon. So what we are trying to say is that our approach that we are taking in this lecture series is precisely the approach as is given in Stanford Encyclopedia. So let's now come to the role of the essence or the spirit. We see that the spirit is the challenge for human nature, how to develop the spirit. From the time of Carroll's Walrus and Carpenter, things, it seems, have not changed. That is, since the 1850s, the time of the Industrial Revolution, the things have not significantly changed because 2008's events, that is the recession and the social pain that led to OECD reframing the goal of education. What happened in 2008? 2008 once again saw innocent people being gobbled up by the strong, who were again using deceptive tactics of the Walrus and the Carpenter. The young oysters used sense perception that Immanuel Kant of the Enlightenment School said can be deceptive. The challenge that oysters faced in 1850s remains the same till date. Can education meet this challenge? The challenge is of the essence and thus can only be met by getting to the essence or the spirit that makes well-being, as given in our evidence, possible, so that it can be expanded to all of society. We have some evidence, now we want to use education to take it to the rest of society. So what do we find when we do this? We find, are we going to blame academic curriculum? What do we find? We find that the same curriculum of education was used there in our evidence. Hence the problem may not be so much in the curriculum, but in the spirit with which it has been applied in society. So and I stress this, can the same curriculum be studied not using sense perception as a guide? That's the key question we have come to in our 16th session. The wise old oysters refuse to be tempted or misguided by sense perception. What practices and perception creates such an outlook? Can this same be used in the new curriculum? As we have started from evidence that has created well-being for over 3 decades in a sustained manner and is self-sustaining, we should explore these practices that they have followed and the perspective that they have used. So we will explore the practices in the next session, but we will start the beginning of exploring the practices in this session. But before we look at that, let's clarify in our minds, what do educationists search for in a curriculum? So the 2008 crisis was preceded by a conundrum that was pointed out by the chairman of Fed Reserve, Greenspan. In February 2005, the Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan noticed that the 10-year Treasury yields failed to increase despite a 150 basis point increase in federal funds rate, and called it a conundrum. Everything was right in theory, yet practice was not following theory. The 10-year yield was not increasing despite the Fed fund rate increasing. So, is it not a conundrum that education is designed to alleviate social pain? Yet OECD finds that despite a spread of education in the last 150 years, social pain increased. How to find a way out of this conundrum? Because the very purpose of education is to prevent such misery in society. Did a conundrum in economics emerge from a conundrum in logic or method or methodology of using ethics? Economics too has a curriculum. We saw how profit maximization of Adam Smith, who was the father of economics, how the profit maximization idea given by him was used, while his Irish Enlightenment work, the theory of moral sentiments, was ignored in curriculum design. It doesn't have such a prominent role as profit maximization. So did a belief in sense perception as the essence that guides ideas and actions, was that the cause of problems? What if all theories are correct, whether in economics or in education? What if the opposite to what theories are stating is occurring all the time? Theory may well say, it's not my problem, it is the practice that has created these problems. We have seen the same theory or education curriculum being used in our evidence, and we saw that use of that has led to well-being. The only difference in our evidence is that the practices in our evidence have emerged from a different philosophy, leading to a completely different use of knowledge. It has created an awareness that led to well-being in being created in society for decades, and it is being created still in a self-sustaining manner. So, what is the essence that emerges from wisdom's philosophy? What practices helped humans capture that essence or spirit? Can we see how this spirit is awakened? And since we are talking of spirit all the time, even at the risk of being called spiritual, we have to explore the practices to capture the spirit which creates well-being. Now, when we are doing this, we have to review academic work. And when we started reviewing academic work many sessions ago, we started with the disclaimer which we are going to repeat now. And the disclaimer is that no academic work is criticized, as all seek the idea of essence. They are all seeking the essence in their own way. However, wisdom's experience of the essence is totally different. So the first thing about the spirit or the spiritual approach is that it seeks the essence and does not criticize meaninglessly. It seeks the spirit of all work and uses the best of everybody's efforts. All thinkers seek to improve education curriculum. They emerge from myriad ideas. Wisdom uses the very best of these ideas, especially those ideas that transform human beings. It sees the essence behind their work and does not criticize any effort. This is the method we also use, picking the best of all. We started today's session by seeing the work of Fleener, Dean of College of Education, NC State University, wherein the context of Louis Carroll's work was raised. Fleener discusses Ramus and wants education to move away from Ramus's approach to Dewey's. Ramus was supposed to be anti-Aristotle, but Stanford Encyclopedia clarifies that he was not rebelling against Aristotle, but against all others who had, in his opinion, interpreted Aristotle incorrectly. We also seek right interpretations ourselves of the work of all thinkers. So let's start from the very beginning here. Plato was the foremost among the disciples of Socrates. Aristotle was the disciple of Plato. Alexander was the pupil of Aristotle. Plato commended a system of polity based on morality, righteousness, mutual forbearance as conducive to well-being of society. He attached greatest importance to truth, beauty, and consciousness, and goodness as the basic virtues. Truth, beauty, and goodness as the basic virtues. In ancient Indian wisdom, these three qualities are the same, only different words have been used to describe these three qualities of truth, beauty, and goodness, and the words used there are Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Thus, though different words are used, the essence is the same. That's why our emphasis on the essence, the spirit. The spirit recognizes the unity underlying apparent diversity. We seek the essence in academics by using the underlying spirit or essence that all are seeking. We ignore differences to unify the work of scholars in an effort to ameliorate social pain. Our emphasis is on practice. Ramus too lays an emphasis on this. This practice should emerge from an experience. Fleener calls Dewey a genius, and Dewey believes in experience. Ancient wisdom is about living in the experience of goodness. But will sense perception allow it for long? Allow you to live in that experience of goodness for long? Sense perception seeks personal gain. Slowly, personal gain is sought at any cost. There is no self-regulation idea in sense perception then. Ancient wisdom regulates sense perception through righteous conduct. Are practices led by sense perception the root of the problem by diverting the essence or the method away from well-being of all for and make it directed towards creating prosperity only for a few? So is sense perception the problem? So instead of seeking prosperity for all and using our academic curriculum for that, the way it has been used by sense perception is to create prosperity for few. So let's look at Stanford Encyclopedia. Why are we repeatedly doing that? Because we want to use one source of research. We don't want anyone to accuse saying that you have used, at your will, something from here, something from there only to prove your point. That's not the spirit that we follow. The spirit we follow is in the evidence that we are using one source of research. It should be credible so that anyone can refer to it with ease, and its logic we will take to the end. So let's look at Stanford Encyclopedia. It states that method was a topic of enormous interest during the 16th century, unquote. We also emphasize on method and methodology of righteous conduct as a way of curriculum design of research ethics. Ancient wisdom's clarity on ethics emerges from discrimination using righteous conduct, not sense perception. What practices of living life enable this discrimination? Not just sharpening intellects. That's not the idea of ancient wisdom, just to sharpen your intellect. As we look at practices of ancient wisdom, Ramus too likes practice. Stanford Encyclopedia states, and I quote, according to Ramus, there are always three essential aspects of every art which needs to be considered: nature, principles, and practice. It was the third element, practice, which was essential. For it was through practice that one demonstrated that the art and its principles were correct. If they were correct, the art was useful and constructed according to nature. Unquote. What is the practice of ancient wisdom? Its righteous conduct emerges from speaking the truth. Its unity of thought, word, and deed seeks to create a perception of oneness in the mind towards society, humanity, and nature. The essence of all religions is the principle of oneness, the principle of love. So the introduction to Fleener's chapter in JSTOR states that the chapter raises two issues. One, what are schools for? And two, the issue whether logic, that on which Peter Ramus built his concept of curriculum, is the best way for learning to occur. Unquote. It explains Fleener's idea as, and I quote, moving the concept of curriculum from the preset structures we have seen operating from Ramus to Tyler to the concept of a dynamic, ongoing, organocentric process where the situation itself becomes paramount. Unquote. And then it goes on to conclude, and I quote, had the young oysters paid more attention to the situation, they might never have taken the long and final walk to the beach. Unquote. It looks at the situation of education as, and I quote, a dynamic interaction between self and society. Unquote. Is the Sahana Vavtu approach not opening every class with this dynamic interaction between self and others as a habit, even before thought arises, even before we start thinking in the class? We open the interaction with this dynamic interaction between self and others. Fleener wants the curriculum design to move away from Peter Ramus's ideas, which had influenced education curriculum in Europe in the 16th and 17th century. Dewey, whom Fleener calls a genius, influenced education curriculum ideas in USA and all over the world after the 1850s. He taught at the University of Michigan and the University of Minnesota. Let us see what was Rames's emphasis on practice like. He too believed in experience, which Fleener calls Dewey as a genius, for he too believed in experience, and Rames believed in observation also. So let's go back to that single source of research and try to find the essence behind all differences, whether be it Rames or Dewey. So Stanford Encyclopedia states about Rames, and I quote, "The process of acquiring knowledge should consist of 4 steps, as we can see in the following example. In the first place, we feel intoxicated. Secondly, we realize by means of observation that this feeling may have been induced by wine, since we have consumed a great deal of it. But is there actually a causal connection between our consumption of wine and our feeling of drunkenness? To establish certain knowledge, it is necessary, thirdly, to examine by means of induction the effects of drinking wine, so that we can conclude that wine is genuinely the cause of drunkenness. Fourthly, we can by means of experience use our knowledge to avoid getting drunk next time." Unquote. In the curriculum we are using the experience of being drunk with social pain to find out how to avoid it next time. To enable this, we seek the essence of practices that led to well-being in what was a hamlet in 1900s. What was the philosophy that guided the general theory of education used by educational institutions in this hamlet of 1900s? And see how much well-being has been created there. We saw it. So what was the general theory of education? Dewey, the same encyclopedia, Stanford Encyclopedia, quotes him as saying, and I quote, "Philosophy may even be defined as the general theory of education." Unquote. This is the precise viewpoint that is shared by the evidence that we have given. We are reformulating a theory of education that can create neural networks, or as the PhD who graduated from Stanford was quoted earlier as saying, calling them samskaras. Education for us is a method of developing samskaras, the method of practices that capture the spirit or essence is the methodology used by students in the educational institutions given in our evidence. We will explore these spiritual practices that create the samskaras, which enable, or the education concepts that enable their use for the well-being of society. Our emphasis is on the essence that guides practice. We have emphasized on seeking the essence in all lectures. In research methodologies too, we have tried to point out that we should seek the essence of all methodologies to conduct research. We have given the example of teachers, how they are using the essence of all methodologies to explore the student's mind and its contexts to enable a transformation of ideas. Similarly, we have sought the essence of all philosophies of education in the earlier interactions. The human heart too should be trained to seek the essence. We have given a disclaimer that we are not criticizing any academic work. All of them are seeking the essence in their own way. Religions sought the essence, but its practices led to dogmatism. And many scientists were, in fact, rebelling against dogmatism of religions. So we have given the essence of all religions in 4 shared values which are present in all of them: truth, righteous conduct, peace, and love. 4 shared values are the essence of all religions. Feuerbach too was seeking to bring the essence back within the individual. What a wonderful idea, which he felt Hegel had put outside. He thought Hegel had put the essence outside. Feuerbach too believed in the role of ethics. How can we criticize him? His earlier work has many ideas of ancient wisdom. Bertrand Russell had so many useful ideas as he explored the essence. Yet, he sought in Principia Mathematica a set of rules through which all mathematics could be explained. Does a confusion in the method when we seek to apply reductionism that the essence signifies in the physical world? Do we think that because the essence is present everywhere, Ishavasyam idam sarvam, as ancient wisdom texts say, because it's the essence, it will apply even to the physical world? That is what reductionism is trying to do. So did education fall in this trap of trying to capture the experience of the spirit in a mathematical equation and call it reductionism? Wisdom in ancient wisdom uses the intellect to direct the mind to transform the human heart. The confusion comes in the method. Hence, to explore the essence of search, the method is critical. The book How to Prevent Recession clarifies the method by its design into two parts. To make this very, very important point of method, the book itself is divided into two parts. The first part is awareness, and the second part of the book is study of limits. So the mind should be steeped in the awareness that the same essence permeates everything. That's the first part. Yet when you use the human body, that's the second part. When you use the human body, you should frame actions within a study of limits or righteous conduct or dharma. If the method or discrimination is not realized, the essence can never be put into practice. Hence, we are together. We learn research ethics using research methodology to discover and experience the essence in this way. The essence is dependent not only on the underlying philosophy but also on its practices. Now we will share in this session and the next session more so the practices that bring the essence to life. The merger of this philosophy into academic concepts will be explained in later sessions if we get an opportunity, how it applies to mathematics, sciences, economics, management, quantum physics, etc. It can be done, but we wonder if we will have time in this course to do it. We may make an attempt later. But let's realize that the essence of ancient wisdom lies not so much in the curriculum but as in the practices. The merger into academic theory without these practices, the merger of the essence into academic theory will never make sense if practices are not done. Hence, perception or samskara has to be transformed for the theory to be understood. So, the human perception first has to be transformed for ancient wisdom's theories to be understood and applied in society. That's why they were applied differently in the evidence we have given. Because the philosophy, the underlying samskara or the education, the practices, they were different. So education imparts the samskara with its method of practices like speaking the truth, which lead to ethics. The idea is that the human mind should be trained to seek the truth or the essence of research problems. Often the essence is revealed as much by inner search as it is by research. So this helps us answer the question why ideas of ethics imparted by education are not used by humans. So which practices can help humans apply ethics? In an earlier session, we had explored the link between mind, matter and education. We found that at one point of time when physics as a study of matter was being explored, at that time if we asked what is mind, the reply would have been it does not matter. Today, if we ask why matter is mostly empty space, we are told, never mind. If empty space is the most important part of matter and we treat our physical body as matter, then what is the empty space in it? Is it the mind? Is it the heart? Is it the intellect? What is its significance? What is the significance of that empty space? What is the empty space within matter? What is the way to transform what is within? Is the lack of a link between mind and matter in academics the cause why ethics is present in theory, but it is not present in the practices used by the mind? Why is the intellect not helping out? Is it being guided by neural networks or samskaras that can be refined by life experiences, aided preferably by education, into experiencing a different level of consciousness? We find that the present state of consciousness is creating social pain. Can education influence these neural networks that influence the intellect to guide the mind to make the right choices that reduce social pain? Will it awaken the conscience within to help living life experiencing higher consciousness? We examine matter in the context of three things: the mind, the intellect, and transformation of neural networks to achieve human potential. How did human perception towards matter change by using practices that used the intellect to transform the mind and the heart? For thousands of years, let us study what are the ideas that have sustained society. Society sustained itself using ideas of religion. As we explore the essence of ideas that sustain society, can we explore the essence of their ideas too? We are open to using all ideas that can alleviate social pain and create well-being. We should not close our doors to any ideas. If we are not criticizing any academic work, we are trying to take the best of all academic work. We should take the best of all ideas of religions also. And we have done that by taking 4 shared values. So society has sustained itself by using ideas of religion. So let's look at them. Buddhism declared that truth and non-violence are basic prerequisites for getting rid of delusions and achieving purity in life. Christianity proclaimed that all are children of God and should have fraternal feelings towards each other. Jesus declared, all are one, be alike to everyone. According to Islam, all are members of one family in spiritual terms. It regarded prayer as the best means of ensuring peace and security in society. Ancient Indian texts declared one must be prepared to sacrifice his body for his community and his community for the sake of the nation. They laid down that the welfare of society is most important. The Upanishads declare the divine has a myriad eyes and a myriad feet. All eyes are God's and all feet are His, all hands are His. This was the message of the Upanishads. In this manner, they emphasized the oneness of humanity. Lest some people get an idea that the idea of any one particular God is being given, we will reveal the real dimension of the concept in the tradition next. So, the spirit or the essence, according to the source which gave the philosophy which guided the evidence, according to that, the spirit of the essence is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. It has been worshipped as God by many names and in many forms by various people. This spirit is adored by the Muslims as Allah, as Jehovah by Christians, as the lotus-eyed Lord by the Vaishnavites, as Shambhu by the Shaivites, as the one who confers health and wealth. They conclude that we should revere the spirit as one supreme omni-self. Does this mean that the spirit is Ishavasyam idam sarvam, prevalent everywhere and in everything? Thus it is present equally in oneself as if it is present in all. If this point of view is taken, then the one-line summation of this tradition, ancient Indian wisdom, that one line you can summarize all its texts. It becomes obvious because this one line says, help ever, hurt never. Its expansion too becomes obvious because its expansion is love all, serve all. Now, if the sense perception is not given importance, then the most important thing whose experience is sought through education is the spirit or the essence. As this spirit or essence is the truth of humans, it can only be experienced by truth and righteous conduct. This is what this tradition says. If, say, my truth is the spirit or essence, and the same is in the other person too, then would you violate their spirit through evil or bad behavior? Would it not be like violating my own? Would this not fulfill Professor Sir Carey Cooper's guideline that we should treat others just as we would like our own son or daughter to be treated? Even though Professor Carey Cooper's guideline seems to be is against what the Stanford Encyclopedia's understanding of some academicians' idea of well-being is. So this thought is overarching the confusion that is stated in Stanford Encyclopedia about the academic understanding of well-being. So unity, fellow feeling and devotion are essential for every human being according to ancient Indian wisdom. To promote these sacred qualities in humankind, some great souls, they say, sought to establish different religions. That is the view that they have. That is why all religions in the evidence that we gave in that place, all religions are followed. All religions, all festivals of all religions are celebrated. The students are given the essence of all religions. Much academic thought and scientific progress has resulted actually from a revolt against religion. Many scientists were rebelling against religion. This led to the ideas of scientific materialism. We have discussed this earlier. The debate religion versus science thus became a reality. So it's either you are religious or you are scientific. That became a common understanding. However, the spirit with which religions were started may well have been the very first expression of science, the inner science. We should be open to this idea. Religion is not a restrictive concept. Religion was intended to develop the human personality and indicate the basic guidelines for right living. Religion was designed to bring out the humanness and enable people to live in harmony with all. Religion sought to demonstrate that unity underlies the diversity in the world. So what are the four limbs of religion? The four limbs of religion are love, sacrifice, service and righteousness. Can you tell me any one religion which doesn't follow these four limbs? Like we have limbs, 2 arms, 2 legs. These are the arms and legs of religion. Religion brings out the essence, the spirit and sublime feelings in humans, helping them serve society. They try to evoke all that is great, blissful and good within the humans, demonstrating the unity of mankind. It is supremely unfortunate that religion, which has such a high and sacred objectives, is construed and practiced in a very narrow way and propagated as a narrow creed restricted to a few. This is not what the ideas were. Religion can be like an undercurrent that sustains the whole of humanity. The founders of religions, with a view to spreading the subtle secrets of religious faith, laid down certain rules of conduct and conveyed their message to the people. As the scientific basis of religious ideas is not clarified, current academic curriculum does not use them. The wisdom inherent in some of them is thus considered unscientific. Is this causing a gap between scientists and some social influencers? Any such gap can lead to differences, which is unhealthy. A very interesting finding by Pew Research in July 2006 showed that 95% of Americans believed in some form of deity or higher power. Every US dollar prominently displays "In God We Trust." More specifically, more than 83% say that, in this Pew Research, say that they believe in God, while 12% stated that they believed in some universal spirit or higher power. A survey was done by Pew Research in May and June 2009 on the scientists who are members of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Its results showed that 41% of scientists do not believe in God or a higher power, while only 4% of the public share this view. Only 33% of scientists said that they believed in God. Is the influence of scientific thinking on education curriculum creating a conflict within a family's belief system? If a mindset of teaching that graduating students are exposed to clashes with the family beliefs, this conflict needs to be resolved. Ancient Indian wisdom resolved it thousands of years ago. If lack of faith in God is mistaken as a lack of faith in ethics, morals, etc. by the common public, this will become a matter of concern for reputation of all scientists, especially in a crisis. It is not surprising that when a scientist called Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project, writes a book titled "The Language of God, a Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief," unquote. If this is the title of the book by an eminent scientist, it becomes what? A bestseller. Maybe the public feels that they share a common faith with those who are protecting society. Academics, however, should stick to the scientific point of view, irrespective of what others think. The spirit of science searches for truth behind phenomena. The spirit should be shared through education. Ancient wisdom in Indian tradition had belief in God and also had a powerful stream of Buddhism which denies such a belief. They do not believe in God. Despite differences, all debates were used for a common understanding of how humans must search for truth and how humans should act in society. Such a common understanding of how they should act, whether in companies to prevent recession or as scientists who, is needed when scientific ideas are imbibed by students. The belief in God is not necessary, if Buddhism shows, to come to the same conclusions that are there in ancient Indian Vedic tradition. Their conclusions are the same. It is evident that all religions propagated unity for promoting the well-being of society. The welfare of the world is bound up with the well-being of society. Self-realization and self-knowledge can be got only through social involvement. That is what is being taught to the students in the educational institutions which have created well-being in that hamlet in the 1900s. Unfortunately, society today is riddled with strife, chaos and conflict. All religions preached the greatness of spiritual purity. All religions called upon people to adhere to the path of truth. They also taught that good qualities are essential for humans. Thus, the essence of all religions is one and the same. When all scriptures proclaim the same truth, when the goal of all human effort is one, where is the basis for any difference? The paths are varied, but the destination is one and the same. It is a sign of human degradation that in spite of these truths, they indulge in conflicts and agitations on account of religious differences. Let me give an example. When there is a downpour, rain comes, the water that comes down is pure. It may fall on different places, mountains, plains, rivers, the sea, so on. Now, according to the region through which the rain water is passing, the name and the form undergoes change. You call it the Nile, or you call it the Ganges, or you call it the rivers by another name. Because of these variations, it should not be thought that water itself is different. So the ideas of the religions are the same. Like the rainwater, they fell in different regions. They were given different names, like the names of rivers. But the underlying quality of the water, the underlying quality of the ideas which create well-being is the same. We should grasp the qualities based on the teachings of the founders of different faiths, having regard to the requirements of the time and circumstance of particular countries, and keeping in view the specific needs of the people concerned, certain rules and regulations were laid down. On this account, one faith should not be considered superior and another inferior. The primary duty of humans is to bear in mind these secret truths and practice them in life. This is what is being taught. This is the philosophy from which the evidence of well-being has been created. I'm just restating that. It's a summary of, and some of these are words that I've used are direct quotations from the source, which is given the underlying philosophy which is common to all religions, which is the basis of the curriculum which is taught at these educational institutions, where the transformation of students has been done so that so much well-being can be created, and that Hamlet of 1900s has transformed into this kind of landscape. So now the time has come to understand the Sahana Vavtu mantra. For 16 lectures we were preparing ourselves to experience it. Now is the time to experience it. Because humans in ancient wisdom, for all humans according to ancient Indian tradition, life is a collective concept, and this is fundamental. It is not individualism, because they believe that no one can live in the world all by himself or herself. Humans should cultivate the sense of community if they wish to live in peace and happiness. Sahana Vavtu, Sahanau Bhunaktau, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahvi Ram Karvavahi. Let us live together. Let us struggle together. Let us grow together in joy and harmony. This was the teaching of the Vedas, and this is the beginning of education. Till now we have interpreted the Sahana Vavtu mantra by saying, I will learn from your question, you may learn from my experience. Until so much information is imparted, it is not possible to reveal the real meaning of this mantra. Hence only in the 16th session is the real meaning of the mantra revealed. It took 15 sessions to prepare the context of the mantra to be explained, because just reciting the mantra is not enough. The context should be understood. From here, the journey into practices that bring this mantra to life through actions begins. This journey is to develop samskara. This we will discuss in the next interactions. The idea of samskara, let us remember, was introduced, is not, again, we are not trying to promote a religious concept or one particular sect, one particular nation, one particular ideology. No. The idea of samskara, how was it introduced in these sessions? It was introduced by the work of an American lady who did her PhD graduating from Stanford and became the editor of the 11-volume Encyclopedia of Hinduism. So what is the idea of samskara in this tradition? The ancient Indian tradition, the Sanatana Dharma tradition, what we call the eternal ideas of righteous conduct. It's not religion. These are eternal ideas of righteous conduct. So what is the idea of samskara there? We will explore it in the next session, and also explore how it is developed within students through education. So I thank you for your time and attention, and we bring this session to an end. Thank you so much.